Whenever you're ready.
Imagine you're walking across campus and you pick up a newspaper to check for job ads, and to your surprise, you see that the U.S. space program is looking for a new astronaut. You apply, and out of 8,000 people, you are one of 35 people selected to be an astronaut. This actually happened, and it happened to Sally White. That's all. Today I will be discussing the many factors that took place in order for the first American woman to travel into space and the impact she left on our community. Sally's parents encouraged her to do her schooling, but when she was 9, they took her out of school so that they could go travel to Europe for a year. Her dad, Dale Wright, who was a college professor, and her mother, Joyce Wright, an English teacher and counselor, they tutored her and her sister throughout this traveling period. And so when Sally went back to school, she was able to skip a grade because she was so advanced in her studies. Over time, Sally developed a love for tennis, and she was so good at it that she won a scholarship to Westland High School. It was a private high school near Beverly Hills. It was an all-girls school. And this is where she met her 11th grade teacher that impacted her life tremendously. Her name was Dr. Elizabeth Moments, and she influenced Sally's love for science. Sadly, by the time that Wright got to be an astronaut, her teacher had passed away. After high school, Sally went to Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania, that top one up there. I mean, that was her high school, and then this was the college she went to. She went to Swarthmore for 2 years, and her sophomore year, she left to try to pursue a tennis career. But then she quickly realized that she wasn't going to get that far. She was really good, but she wasn't great. So she went back to school, but instead of going back to Swarthmore, where it was really far from her family, it was in Pennsylvania, so she decided to stay in California, so she applied to Stanford University. That's where she earned her bachelor's degree in physics and in English, and she received her master's degree in physics and her PhD in physics. So now that you know a little more about Sally Wright's education, let's move on to her experiences as an astronaut and her training. Like I mentioned in the beginning, Sally applied for the job at NASA, and out of 8,000 men and women, she was selected. 35 people were selected in total, and out of those 35, only 6, including Sally, were women. This was a huge triumph considering that the women's movement was going on while Sally Wright was growing up. Women wanted equal pay for the same jobs that they were doing as men, and they weren't receiving that. So when NASA realized that a lot of people were supporting this, they decided to allow the astronaut job to be open to women as well. So that was the first time that women were allowed to apply. They also wanted scientists and engineers. Before this, only pilots were allowed to go into space because the shuttles weren't big enough to hold more people, like scientists and engineers and other people that could do experiments and stuff like that. So the shuttles were becoming bigger, and they allowed other people to go. So Sally was chosen for those reasons because she had a PhD in physics. And in her first year of training, she had to spend hours learning how the shuttle works. So she had to learn how the computers worked, the electrical system, the mechanical parts, and she had to learn how to put on her spacesuit, how to survive in water in case the shuttle crashed into the water. She also had to learn first aid in case anyone got sick. She went through rigorous physical tests. She had to parachute out of planes, scuba dive in cold water. She had to go through weightlessness training. She spent a lot of time in a simulator, which was, it's over there on that side where they put you in a seat like that, and she spent up to 8 hours in that just to see if she could handle being in space. They would flip you upside down, and it would shake, and then it would make really loud noises. And she was also dropped into the ocean from 40 feet in the air. These were all tests to make sure that she can handle difficult situations in case they occurred. According to Who Was Sally by Megan Stein, the hardest test for Sally was the drop and drag, which is at the bottom right here. It's where she was thrown into the water from a speeding boat wearing her spacesuit and connected to a parachute, where the parachute was connected to the boat, and she was dragged through the icy water, and she had to get out of her harness, and then she had to swim back to the dock, which wasn't close by. In total, she worked about 60 hours a week on her training. She was called a mission specialist because she had more than one job to do in the space shuttle. One of her jobs was to control the robotic arm, which would set, it would send the satellites orbiting in the right direction. And she helped build it with the help of NASA. And in total, her practicing and preparing to go into space took her 5 years. So she went to school for 8 years, and then she studied another 5 years to go into space. And then finally, on June 18th of 1983, Sally Ride got to go into space. And for the next 6 days, she would be in space and return on June 24th. Sally went with 4 other people. They were all men, 2 of them pilots, and 2 of them were mission specialists like her. He was the pilot, the one in the middle, and the one at the end. And the other 2 that are standing, they were mission specialists like Sally, so they knew how to do more than one thing. The space shuttle that they went on was called the Challenger. And when they went up into space, her job was to send the satellite in the right direction, and she also took a lot of pictures for NASA and carried out other experiments. Nothing went wrong in that space. Yeah, nothing went wrong in space. So they came back safely, and in October of 1984, Sally went back into space with a different group. And this time, a lot of things did go wrong. For example, the satellite hinges were frozen, and so she had to figure out a way to defrost them. So she asked the pilot to turn the shuttle so that the sun could defrost the hinges, and then it could be sun off. And then another day, an antenna didn't want to work, and then in another day, a radar panel wouldn't close. But she stayed calm and she figured it out, proving that NASA made the right decision in their choice. Sally retired from NASA in 1984, and she worked at Stanford University as a scientist, and then she moved to San Diego, where she became a director of the California Space Institute. She also started many projects for kids and called KidSat. It helped with help from NASA. It allowed students from 3 different schools to come up with science experiments to try in space. And in 2001, Sally started her own company, Sally Ride Science, where she created programs and inspired young girls to hold on to their love for science and pursue careers in science. In conclusion, Sally Ride was not only a role model for young women, but for everyone. She was an engineer, a scientist, an astronaut, and she started a company. Her dedication and her 8 long years of college paid off in the end, because she would forever be known as the first American woman to go into space.
All right, Jack, share with us your opinion about the speech.
I thought it was a really good speech. The organization and the content was really, really well done. The chronological order really worked really well with the speech that it was spoken for. I really liked that she tied in the women's movement in when she was talking about Sally Ride, because obviously that was a big thing at the time. There were clear signposts in her speech. I never once felt like I was lost, or I never felt like, why is she talking about this? It was really clear. And as for the visuals, she used really good visuals. I like the picture of Sally and her team. It brings home the point that how big it was for a girl to be going into space for a woman. The training pictures are really good, and the quote that she used from Who is Sally, I think, was a really good quote, and her description of the grueling training was also very good. Things that she could improve on is probably just delivery stuff, like her voice could be a little bit louder. One thing also was she talked about how she was influenced by her teacher in high school, but I don't think she talked about how she was influenced by the teacher. And she could have, since she had the pointer and the note cards, I feel like she could have stepped out from behind the desk a little bit more. And yeah, but overall, I think the organization and the content on the speech was really good. And I think she did a great job.
Okay. Well, you picked out 2 or 3 of the things that I would have said. For example, just on the delivery issue, if you've got the remote, why do you need to stand behind the demo station? If you're going to be right there at the demo station, you don't need the remote. You can just hit the cursor on the computer. The truth of the matter is the remote's designed to help you get out from behind the demo station, and so it seemed a little bit strange that you stayed there the whole time. That separates you a lot from the audience. It makes you look, it diminishes you as the focus of attention. It turns you into the narrator, and that's not what we're looking for. I thought that the topic was introduced pretty effectively. You had a nice visualization that you started with. It's very clear what your topic is. The thesis, the purpose statement, I think could be a little bit sharper. I didn't really hear a preview, but like Jack said, it's chronological in order, so it's not that hard to follow. We're just going to follow a pretty straight trajectory of her career, especially as it relates to her working as an astronaut. And I thought that you did a good job focusing on the things that got her into the space program. I would have liked to have known a little bit more about her academic career as a physicist and why NASA thought that that was an important thing to have. When they're making their selection process, they had 8,000 applicants, and then they narrowed it down to 36, and only 6 were women. How did they narrow it down to the 36, and why did she end up in that particular pool? I think we could use a little bit more information about that. And if there were 6 women who made it through that initial screening to the 36 that was it 36? Yeah, to the 36 that were selected from that recruiting period, how did she get picked to be the first woman to go instead of the other 5? Is there a reason for that? Is there something that stood out? Those kinds of things, I think, would be the extra touch that would make this a little bit more personable and memorable, and rather than just like the encyclopedia article on Sally Ride, the nice little touches there. The best example of something that I thought that you did that sort of makes it a little bit more special is talking about in the training that the drag and drop or drop and drag exercise, that was the hardest for her. I said, okay, so there's something unique about her. I would have liked to have heard why it was hardest for her. Something in her words, for instance, talking about that. She has had to have talked about it to somebody for them to know that this was the hardest for her. Well, what did she have to say about it? That would have been one of those things that would make it a little bit more interesting, talking about it from her perspective. The visuals are fine. They don't add a lot of understanding to what we're talking about, except for the I do like the idea that there is like Jack mentioned, that there's a connection to the women's movement, and this is really, an important step. We're talking about having role models for women in the sciences, especially, and here's a place where somebody is really making a difference. I think that's an interesting point. It had never occurred to me before you said it, and suddenly it just made so much sense. Why did we have people who weren't pilots becoming astronauts finally? And the answer is pretty straightforward. You have a payload capacity that you didn't have before. When you had the earlier space launches, they were all very small compartments. You had 1, 2, or 3 people there. They all had to be able to pilot the craft that was going on, and although they might have had other things that they were doing in the process, their primary function was to get the thing to work. But once you turned it into the equivalent of a space bus, you know, so the shuttle is allowing us to take people who might have scientific work to do up to space to do their work, and their primary purpose is not to handle the craft or manage those things, but to do something else. Oh, well, now it suddenly makes sense why you get so many more different people, and why it's easier for a woman to be included in that process, because you didn't have women test pilots and fighter pilots and all that kind of stuff prior to that. And so one of the key differences here is just a technical thing. Maybe there's a political choice that's going on also, but there's a technical change that's going on. And I thought that that was an interesting point and might have even merited a little bit more attention. All right. Thank you.